Welcome to Flat Earth Debate Live. I'm your host, Nathan Oakley, and if you are new to this channel, or you've not done so already, then be sure to subscribe, hit the bell notification icon and join button if you'd like to become a Nathan Oakley 1980 channel member and keep up to date with the Flat Earth Debate. If you would like to support the channel, there is a super chat that runs alongside each of these shows while they are live. There's also a PayPal, Patreon and crypto link in the info box below this video. Also below this video is a link to get £50 by switching your UK energy supplier to Octopus Energy. Most importantly, if you'd like to join the discussion, simply mute the page you are currently watching, then click the link in the info box below this video to join the panel and express your views on the nature of Earth. If you do join, please don't swear. If you do, you'll be ejected, and if you are, please don't try to rejoin the stream using sock accounts. You'll be warmly welcomed back on the next stream. Please also share the show on social media. Sharing the show obviously increases the live audience, but this in turn increases the chances of a more diverse panel, so please share the show on Facebook and Twitter. One last time, if you're new to the channel or you've not done so already, then be sure to subscribe, hit the bell notification icon and join button to keep up to date with the Flat Earth Debate. Now, we are joined by 10th Man, Neil, Flatzoid, and a whole bunch of people in Discord. So, welcome, one and all.
Good morning, all.
Good afternoon.
Hey, hey, hey.
Hey, hey, hey. Enthusiastic. A bit more enthusiastic than yesterday. Hopefully, there'll be a bit less politics about the public gateway that is Discord today. We might actually get through housekeeping in its entirety. We shall see. Any evidence of a physical geometric sphere edge, that's a horizon, formerly known as Earth curvature.
Not in our... You beat me to it. Not in our reality, Nathan.
Not in our reality?
The reality itself.
Our reality?
Sorry.
Oh,
Sorry,
nice one there. Nice one.
Sorry.
You got me on that one.
Sorry, do we see optically or do we see mathematically?
We see optically.
Then there's definitely a no.
No geometric sphere edge? Bummer. They kind of need that, though, don't they, to assert that we've got physical geometry?
Using curved lines for angles.
Yeah. So we present the black swan imagery, and they say, well, it's refracted. Oh, really? So you can't draw a tangent line to this physical geometric sphere edge horizon, then? It's not a sphere edge horizon. It's not geometric. It's apparent, refracted, non-physical. Well, isn't that wonderful? Bye, globe Earth geometry. Welcome to Flat Earth.
Snacks in the back.
Well, then how can they build buildings and survey then?
Well, they do it flat. Because it is
Right,
flat.
but they won't admit it.
Hello.
Hey, Owen.
Hey,
Good show today.
you guys did you know they just measure using Cartesian coordinate systems, right?
Yeah,
Look,
that's what Brian showed us. I'm talking to any baller to come in and give us their version.
as Arwin was discussing it for the majority of the, or his live show, any evidence you can have gas pressure without a container?
Yeah, don't think about it, and it'll be all right.
I posted a so-called citation from Craig Fight the Flat Earth in Master B on this. You might want to read it out loud and laugh your head off.
But did you want to read it? I've got it up on screen. It starts with a closed system, correct?
Yeah, must I read it?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, we'll start with a closed system. What do you think of when you hear the word closed? Do you think it's of a closed door or a closed box? Well, if you thought of a closed box, then you aren't too far away from the definition of a closed system. By definition, a closed system is a system in which the only thing that can be transferred with its surrounding is energy. A sealed box is a perfect example of a closed system. Nothing that's contained within it can come out, and nothing on the outside can come in. However, if, for example, the heater turned up in the room, the box is sitting in its surroundings, the box itself, and eventually the contents inside will heat up as well. This is because of heat is energy. Now, remember that, the Earth. You may not think of the Earth as a closed box. After all, you hear of astronauts going into space and even walking on the moon. But in fact, it is closed because virtually all matter things that have mass and take up space inside the Earth's atmosphere is kept inside as long as it follows the Earth's physical laws. Only if matter breaks these laws does it leave the Earth. Astronauts leaving the Earth is an intentional act, and a difficult one at that. I'm not going to go on. I think you get the idea.
Yeah, it's self-contradicting. So it's saying this is what closed is. Like a box, stuff doesn't get in and out if it's closed. And obviously, stuff does get in and out of Earth. Oh, right, so not closed then. But it's closed. What? You just said that closed means stuff doesn't get out. But now you're saying it is closed, but stuff does get out? That would make it open. What's that? Oh, it's a big problem for it to be open next to a vacuum because all the gas would escape. But you still need to be able to say that men travelled to the moon. So it's an open-closed system, an oxymoron.
So, Flatsoid, he actually posted this. Flatsoid, he actually posted this?
Yeah, I actually made a video on it earlier today.
Oh my goodness. It sounds like the debate show when he get here, he did the violation of the law of non-contradiction, holding both sides of the argument at once.
Worth giving both of those a couple of shout outs. So shout out to Arwin's channel first and foremost. So Arwin had a great show today, and I couldn't turn it off. I've got to be honest. That's when you know it's a good show, when you're like, I've got to go and do stuff now, but you're still listening, making the odd comment here and there. So check out. I don't know what the show number was today's show. Arwin, what was the show number? Oh, 793. Oh, thank you, Arwin. Good to know that you're on the ball. Also, subscribe today to Flatsoid FE, who's been on fire at the moment. He's making some really cracking videos. So it's one of those that, you know, when you get excited and you see something in your subscriptions feed as opposed to the homepage, where it's going to give you some random junk, it actually is one of those that you go, somebody who I'm subscribed to has made a video. And that's Flatsoid FE, who's ever increasing in his subscriber base, and as it should be so. So subscribe today to both Flatsoid FE and Arwin. That's ARWIJN. Any evidence that you can have? Oh, go on. Someone's keen. Go on, Paul. Hey, by the way.
Hey, how you doing? I caught some of what the Flatsoid was saying. I was on Discord and I tried to jump over to meet, but the bloggers are in Discord are claiming that you can treat something as if it's not something. Like you can treat the Earth as an isolated system, even though it's not. But you can treat it that way. So I think there's doublespeak all over the place. Okay, for sure.
Hold on. Well,
any system could go ahead.
I was going to say, well, let's follow that through. So we can treat Earth as an isolated system according to that statement from a baller. Okay, so man can't go to the moon then.
Well, but when you're doing mathematics and calculations, though, and it depends on the precision that you want. That's what they're saying. That's what they argue. So it depends on how precise you want. If you don't want it precise, you have to treat it as an open system. If you want it precise, you have to treat it as isolated, as a closed system. That's what they're arguing now.
It's not an either-or circumstance, though. Either it's isolated, in which case men can't leave and travel to their presumed-to-be rock in the sky that they've lied about called the moon, or it's open, in which case the gas would fill the space. You can't have it both ways at the same time.
You're looking at it from the wrong viewpoint, aren't you? You're looking at it from a valid, scientifically valid and commensurate with natural law viewpoint. But if you look at it more from the perspective that we must be able to go to the moon, then it's a lot easier to accept the contradiction that it is closed, yet if we want to go outside, it's open. It's not so much you can view it like that, it's that if you're going to stay in the ball paradigm, you have to view it as open and closed.
Even though that's a glaring contradiction. Shout out to Joseph369, who's joined us, Penguin. Thank you very much indeed. Welcome.
But see, it goes a step further, though. They can even treat it as an isolated system, not just closed, but the Earth can be an isolated system.
Yeah, we covered this.
That in Discord the other day.
Yeah. Then men can't go to the moon.
I just love how they claim it has to abide by the natural laws, but in the same sentence say it can escape the natural laws.
They had another word in there, though, didn't they, Flatsoid? They had the word atmosphere about a sentence prior to that, didn't they?
Yep.
Right. So in there, let's just bring it back up. So because they've already qualified what they're going to be talking about when they just talk about laws of nature, they're talking specifically about atmosphere. So atmo, that's air. Sphere. Whoa, hold on a second. So this is trying to overcome the gas filling the space problem by saying that air takes the shape of a sphere because they arbitrarily decide that air is sphere-shaped, when in reality it fills the availability of volume it has. It'll fill the containment available to it. Not take the shape of a sphere, but they've qualified that because they've got a whole sphere-shaped air law, haven't they, Flatzoid?
Yep, and those air laws are based on normal gas laws as well, but they like to ignore that part.
Yeah, they got their fundy sphere-shaped air law instead when they have a problem that gas would fill a vacuum if the sky was a vacuum. It's not. The gas would fill the space. Anything more on fake space and gas filling it if we had a sky vacuum?
Just one last bit from Flatzoid's quotation that you just pulled off screen. I was about.
Oh, you want me to put it back? Yeah, no worries.
Yeah, just the use of language. You know, if I was so confident of something being true, then the phrase "you may not think of the Earth as a closed box." After all, you hear of astronauts going into space. Right? It's not astronauts can and do go into space, but you've heard of it. It's a very interesting use of language. It's again keeping it non-committal.
I don't know. The kind of people who read this, I believe, again, I'm dividing their thoughts as much as you, it is a wholehearted acceptance of the rhetoric. So even though there might be some seemingly telling language, I probably would assume moreover that the person writing this just has an automatic belief in it and doesn't, think, oh, that's a bit wrong.
I'd think they're a full Satanist, and by their own religion, they're not allowed to directly lie to us. They have to lie to ourselves.
I understand. It's the law of reversals in there, and it's very Crowley and blah, blah, blah.
Mm-hmm.
Well, Adam, it says on the second one about the Earth, astronauts leaving the Earth is an intentional act. So how does an intentional act violate a natural law?
Well, because...
See what I mean?
Well, again, that's leaning on the idea that natural law... Well, if we no longer have it be natural, i.e. it's not abiding by nature, it's abiding by something that we force upon it, like the disequilibrium example in Dr. John Dee's most recent examples. Well, what can I do? Well, I can interfere with the natural order of things. Well, therefore, it's no longer natural.
You guys.
Hello, whoever that was.
Yeah, can you...
ZLT, yeah, we hear you. Good to have you.
Hey, how's it going? I got something on the gas pressure without a container thing.
Epic. Go right ahead.
I know a guy that worked for Lockheed Martin, and he was building the fuel tanks for the space ships or whatever. And he claims that NASA is lying about space being a vacuum. It's actually zero pressure. So I just want y'all's opinion on that.
You want our opinion on a claim about what space is or isn't? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, his claim is that he knows NASA is lying about space being a vacuum. His claim is that it's just zero pressure.
Okay. So his claim is it's not a vacuum, but a vacuum devoid of pressure. Okay, well, I don't know if that needs addressing, really. I mean, he's saying the absence of pressure or varying degrees of very, very, very low pressure is a vacuum. That's what a vacuum is. And he's saying, no, it's just the absence of pressure. Like, it's not a horse, it's just a big animal you can ride on with 4 legs that's horse-shaped and eats like a horse and... it's what? Yeah, okay. Regardless of what he...
It's not... It's not that, is it, Nathan? It's as accurate as saying it's not a horse, it's an equine animal. You're saying exactly the same thing, just with different language.
That's what I was searching for. I was desperately searching for equine. That was the word. I was thinking, what's the Latin? What's the Latin? I couldn't remember. Do it. Thank you, God. Thank God Adam's here.
But it's that, isn't it? It's just you're describing it just with different language, but you're describing the same thing. You're just using different way of doing it. So, yeah, I'd
Maybe
agree.
maybe he was just trying to say space just doesn't abide to gravity. I don't know. Maybe that's what he's trying to, or he's equating gravity with pressure somehow.
I don't know. It kind of irrelevant, really, because regardless of how he's defining that area that he believes the sky is, his description would also stand in violation of natural law. So, all right, it's just it's just a space then. There's no pressure, that's just a space. All right, well, high pressure goes to low pressure. That's an entropy increase. And what do you know? We've got loads of high pressure gas all around us. Well, it would just dissipate into it.
Agreed.
So that's the end of his argument. Redefining it slightly doesn't help him.
Yeah,
I'm still trying to figure out the connection of the makeup of the fuel tanks. Like, is it going to make them different if they're different surroundings?
Fuel tanks? What?
That's what he said he was making. He was designing the fuel tanks for these spaceships going into zero pressure.
Oh, I see. Sorry, I missed that bit.
Want to repeat it?
Yeah, he worked for Lockheed Martin. That's the guys that built parts for the spacecrafts or whatever, the boosters and the fuel tank and all that other garbage, and that's what he was working on.
Okay. Yeah.
But don't we have the YouTube videos where the very small but not too powerful vacuum is sucking the air out of a oil tanker and it caves in on itself?
Yeah, we got those.
So how does he design his fuel tanks not to do that in zero pressure?
What zero pressure? Let's not do this. Let's not now ask him about how he
That's
designed
what I'm
something to
saying.
work in a place that isn't real. So this is the whole point, that the way that the lie has been set up is with honest, decent people like this guy who does something physical. He makes something physical. It's going somewhere physical. His assumption is that tank is going to go into space and therefore has parameters that he's having to work within that he can replicate on Earth, i.e. vacuum, and then test his equipment. And based on his testing, that makes space real? No. Second law of thermodynamics violation. But because he's made something physical, he will punt space being real because he's worked within the parameters based on his apprehension of what space is and the limitations that it's said to have to make something physical on Earth. That doesn't mean it's gone into space. It doesn't mean there is a space. It just means that he's made something for Lockheed Martin that is claimed to need these parameters to work in a place that isn't real.
Well, according to Craig's citation that Flatoid showed, it's not, because it's a closed system.
Yeah, so as it getting out of the isolated system then, yeah, exactly. But we can think of it as open, unless we're talking about gas expansion. Then we definitely don't. We think of it as closed. But men can get through it, therefore open. But closed for gas. Open for much bigger things like rockets. But closed for gas. That's still here. Atmosphere. Fundy belief and air. Any evidence the R value? Let's move on.
Well, hold on. I wanted to say they do claim gas does escape, though. A little bit of it.
What?
There was
They do claim what?
a little bit of gas escapes.
Yeah, exactly.
90 tons of helium a year or something in it. Or
Oh, I see. And the rest goes down, go boom, boom, does it?
It does. Well, on that, Nathan, I was doing pottering this morning in between Archie's lessons. He's been watching The Bloody Martian, potatoes in space. And my wife's got, and I'm going, not watching this. And I got into the conversation we said about why I'll watch certain sci-fi and not others. And then literally there's a space module docking in the vacuum of space, and it's obviously hurtling at relative speeds of thousands of miles an hour to relative, and then just to slow it down to perfect docking, there's this little bit of venting just to finally control that fine motor control for the docking in the vacuum of space. And it's stuff like that when we was talking about films that wind me up, purported as real, that It is exactly that. They're pimping this use of gas pressure in a vacuum as if you can use it to steer.
As if there's a vacuum to begin with. I know exactly what you're talking about. We talked about this the other day when we were talking about potential globe benefits. One of them being that you can suspend disbelief that far. In other words, if you're a fundy globe head, or not even a fundy, just a normie, and you're watching that, The Martian, with Matt Damon, right? You can just suspend disbelief about that being something that's possible, regardless of the fact that you know Matt Damon isn't really there. Well, your suspension of disbelief in terms of that propaganda piece, which is what it is satisfied the moment you watch the movie, because you as a normie don't even give it a second thought that it's possible to travel through a vacuum. Not only do you not give it a second thought whether or not it's possible to travel through a vacuum, you're automatically under the assumption that the sky is a vacuum. So therefore, jobs are good, and it reinforces the programming. You then under the apprehension, regardless of how terrible the movie is, that there's a sky vacuum. That's all it's trying to achieve.
Well, Adam,
They could technically test it though, like going with a spacesuit in a vacuum chamber, the big one, and then ripping a hole in your glove and seeing if you can actually create some thrust with that. So
what does that achieve? In the same way as the guy for Lockheed Martin's testing fuel tanks in a vacuum chamber potentially, what does that actually achieve? It doesn't reify this idea in violation of natural law that we've got a sky vacuum into existence. That still does not happen, regardless of whether or not you can say, well, I think the sky is a vacuum and I'm shown it being a vacuum in TV shows. Therefore, I need to start testing for the vacuum that it needs to... No. You haven't actually confirmed that we've got a sky vacuum at all.
Sorry. It would just show you it's not possible in a vacuum.
It wouldn't show that.
Really quickly decompress.
It's impossible for anything like on Earth to ever demonstrate that. That NASA's super big vacuum chamber takes 3 days to empty. Fire up a rocket. How quickly would the rocket emissions create enough atmosphere to negate any results you get? Within a microsecond, that rocket firing will fill up the vacuum chamber with an artificial atmosphere to give it a push off. It is not equivalent to the vacuum of space. Those gas molecules, when they fire out of a rocket, go and they never come back. Even in the biggest vacuum chamber, within less than a second, they're already rebounding back and creating something to impart motion from. That's not equivalent in any way to the supposed vacuum of space.
Well, that is true, and I agree. It's not equivalent in any way to a place that is not real.
Yes.
can I comment on Adam watching movies? So The Martian, if you get it in the Russian language, you can watch it, because when it comes to potatoes, they had a spaceship called the Sputnik.
I'm surprised they didn't just turn it into vodka. If it was the Russian one, you'd have had a still.
It's like asking how would things work in Narnia. It's Narnia, terrible. For God's sake.
Sorry, go ahead.
But it's worse than that. It's like saying, how would things work in Narnia? Here, I'm going to set up a simulation that's not like Narnia to prove it.
What can you do? What can you do? We move on? We still want to stick with gas pressure? Any evidence of the R value? Earth radius.
From Nottingham.
Well,
how do they know the size of any celestial body?
They take an assumption of a spherical surface beneath their feet, utilize a physical geometric sphere edge horizon, calculate a dip angle to the apparent horizon with a zenith to a 90-degree angle astronomical horizon, and then they can use trig to derive an R value. So an assumption of a physical horizon gives them an R value. They then superimpose the R value derived by a physical horizon for Earth onto Venus. They then apply Kepler's third law of interplanetary motion to derive a scaling value for all of the other lights in the sky and give them the distances. There you go.
Sorry, Nathan.
That's quite a few presumptions piled on top of each other.
Yeah, Christian Huygens was the one that assumed Venus had the same R value as Earth. That's why it's labelled, when you're told as a kid about the solar system, as Earth's twin.
But wouldn't it be dumb to look up in the sky and say, okay, maybe we are the same size as that Venus, but if you look at Earth water, according to physics, it lies level and flat. So obviously, our deduction about that has to be wrong, correct?
Not about the water bit, but it's outrageous that they should make such an assumption. Yes.
Wait, we're talking about the radius value, right? Well, I had somebody in chat today, surprise, surprise, that said they measured the radius
Oh yeah.
and insisted that
They give you a
did,
method.
without any description of how.
Oh, right. Oh, that's wonderful. Very useful.
And then eventually ended up, without even asserting it, complaining like, yeah, we can't say pictures in space because according to you, that's impossible. He wasn't even suggesting that
Did he say trust me after saying that? Because that usually works. If you say they measured it, trust me. I'm not going to tell you how or where they measured it, but trust me, they did. Did that work?
Yeah, I was going to say, how'd they get the measuring tape to the core
He
of the
just
Earth?
complained about not being able to say it afterward.
They didn't get a measuring tape to the core of the Earth. They assumed
Right, I
a
described
physical...
that to him as well. Like,
Hold
yeah,
on, let's
if
just-
you're going to measure it, you're going to have to physically do it. And then one of the things you could do is make a giant confirmed straight ruler, put it on the Earth, and if at one point it hits the ground, yeah, you have to take a flat spot, not mountainous area, and then yeah, the rest of the ruler is going to bend away, or rather, the Earth is going to bend away from that. Then, yeah, you might have some kind of spherical measurement, but good luck with that.
Did they take optical effects into consideration when making these measurements?
Too much noise. Didn't hear it. I heard optical. I assume that's the main crux of your point, though. Not geometric, optical. However, Owen's describing a ruler. He's describing a ruler to a tangent point. That's geometry. That's what they're asserting. Earth has geometry. Physical, sphere-shaped geometry. We're on a sphere. That's their claim. Well, in order to do so, they need to reify the edge of that sphere into the horizon that we see, and they measure a dip angle to use trig to derive an R value with physical horizons. Geometric obstructions claim to be blocking boats and buildings after deriving the R by way of a dip angle from the horizon. That's Al-Biruni's method. From there, you can take that, superimpose that assumed R value onto Venus, and then apply Kepler's third law. That's how you get all the distances. In the heliocentric model, that is. In the solar system model.
Well, at least Darwin's response is measured.
It was?
Yeah, the ruler.
Oh, right.
All that was a cool story, but how do you measure an apparent location?
You don't.
Maybe NASA has the budget to pay for such a ruler.
Hold on, Owen. Chocolate. You don't. Therein lies the death. Chocolate's question signifies the death of the globe. Can you repeat your question, please, Chocolate?
How do you measure an apparent location?
You don't.
Apparent.
They need it to be physical and geometric. Like a hill getting in the way with its physical nature, you'd need to measure its physicality for its geometry. That requires straight line to tangent points, physical, non. Go on.
And could you define horizon for us?
The apparent location where the sky appears to meet the land or sea.
Right.
Oh, so you're saying the horizon's apparent, and you can't measure to an apparent location, so you can't measure to the horizon.
Well, hold on. If the Earth was a sphere, you could.
Correct. If the Earth was
Oh.
a sphere, hold on. Correct, Darwin. If the Earth was a sphere, we would have a physical, geometric sphere edge for a horizon. That would be matter of fact, because according to them, we're on a physical sphere. So it's going to have physical limitations and geometry to measure. But the horizon isn't physical. They claim it's an Earth curve edge to block things in the distance, but it isn't physical. therefore isn't geometric, isn't capable of deriving an R value from it, isn't blocking boats and buildings into the distance, is an Earth curve. Bye-bye, globe model. It was nice being on you. Or at least it seemed that way while I thought I was.
All just optical drop.
Yeah, again, check out Flatsoy's channel for his examples that he's been coming up with recently, triggering quite a lot of ballers just by showing how well the world actually works. By moving a camera away from something and watching it get smaller, not remaining the same actual size like it does in their maths inside view.
No, not that. Anything but that. Reality? No.
I have a new question that I've been asking the ballers when they're looking at something off in the distance. I said, how do you know that what you're looking at is its true angular size?
That's a contradiction in terms.
That's a great question.
True angular size.
What's that?
True angular size. You can have angular size, right? And you can have the number be accurate that you ascribe to it for whatever value, radians or whatever. But that number isn't anything actual. When you're describing angular size, you're describing its apparent. That would be not actual size. So what's its true angular size? Well, that's a contradiction in terms. It doesn't have a true angular size. It's an apparent measurement.
It's almost like asking how open is the closed door.
Well, there's a kind of, if you think about it though, they're always arguing refraction and all this fun stuff. But things do at a certain rate. If I take a ball and I take it away from me, it will reduce in size at a kind of a given, I guess you could say, rate. And then once it reaches a certain distance...
I'm really sorry to do this, constantly interrupting your thing, Paul. No, it will reduce in apparent size. That would be angular size. But you said it will reduce in size. Well, its actual size, if you measured it with a tape measure, won't change ever. And a point that they take advantage of when they're claiming that the point of angular size reduction to infinity, i.e. it disappears, most likely against the deck bottom up, they're saying that's Earth curve because they represent the phenomena with the target having an actual size that never changes with distance, i.e. feet and inches or meters. So they ask you, why is 3 feet missing from the bottom of this building? Well, 3 feet is 3 feet at 1,000,000 miles or when you're standing right next to it, but the angular size changes. But if they can maintain actual size, feet, meters, whatever they want to use, then they can say the reason it's getting blocked by a physical horizon, geometric, is because it's X distance away from the physical obstruction at the Earth curve edge. Well, because of that, you're getting 3 feet missing at the bottom. When in reality, the not actual size, the apparent size, what it looks like, apparent, appearing, but not actual, will reduce as it gets farther away. To the point where it disappears at the most limited angle. And if the deck, i.e. the thing you're looking over, the ground itself, is limiting your angle, unlike the sky where there's nothing to limit it, then that will be the point where the angular limitation kicks in first, ergo you miss things at the bottom in the far distance first. Not Earth curve edge, based on an actual size being claimed to have an actual feet and inches missing. Hijacking perspective. Sorry, Paul, carry on.
No, it's just about, I'm actually focusing more on the atmospheric aspect of things. And I hear what you're saying, but it's just, if they're going to say that things aren't distorted, then they're going to have to determine what this thing they're looking at is, what it would truly look like, let's say, without which you can't do without an atmosphere. So if we're looking at its true angular size at that distance, what that thing would look like so far away, you'd have to know what that is to be able to determine if anything's distorted, changed, or not equated. So they have to answer that question. That's the only thing I'm saying. But obviously,
every time you say true angular size, I'm like, huh? My brain.
Well, it's like, if they're saying it's distorted, well, they would have to know what it would look like, let's say, without an atmosphere. Like, what would it look like this far away without an atmosphere?
I understand.
Then you can say, well,
I get you. What you're saying is, if there was no atmospheric effect of it being slightly squashed or magnified or whatever, if you knew in degrees what the angular size was without atmosphere, without any interference, then you could then equate how much you saw in terms of how much distortion, if you want to call it that, was taking place. But you'd have to get a baseline. You'd have to get a control. And you can't achieve that. Now, in spite of that, their entire model, everything you see, without exception, isn't where it really is, according to their model. Everything is refracted and bent around the surface of a sphere Earth. Therefore, nothing that you see is actually situated where it really exists in their model, as mad as that sounds. Everything's refracted, and their refraction's bending around a sphere Earth. Nothing's where it's supposed to be, according to them. Amazing as it may be. So it's back to, it's a couple of years old now. Clock at 20 miles, I see it because it's there. Whereas their explanation is it's a slightly looming, non-standard refraction, i.e. a holographic projection of a clock from behind the reified, now debunked horizon that's Earth curve edge.
Right.
That's
Oh, by the way, concerning that, if I may for a second,
Go on.
I challenged the Globers in general today in my chat. Could you please basically design a lens that could make a confirmed spherical or a hill-like surface look into a perfectly flat plane with horizon effects and all? Can you make a lens that can do that? Because I know there's lenses that can do the other way around. You know, any flat surface could be made to look kind of roundish with fisheye lenses. Could you do the reverse? Is that even a physical possibility? Since
see.
you assume that to be there constantly.
So what you're asking for, because they've used terrestrial refraction to flatten out what we actually see, why does it look so flat? Well, terrestrial refraction, that's why it appears flat. Nothing's where it really is. Actually, it's all bent around the curved Earth, but it looks flat. Refraction at whatever rate I decide it's going to be applied today in geometry, with side-on views and things not moving in angular size, retaining their actual size. Well, you're saying, well, based on that, your explanation for the black swan is to say that it's flattened out and the horizon has moved from being a physical hill in the foreground obstructing your view of the thing in the background and become something that's now in the background behind the thing it used to be obstructing. Now, can you give me a lens that can show us that happening on a smaller scale, please? What I want to see is a former hill blocking something, like a matchstick with a little bit of, I don't know, kitchen towel roll as the hill, blocking the matchstick. Now put a lens in that puts the kitchen roll behind the match.
Right, or at least make it look perfectly flat. Like a stretched out plane all of a sudden instead of a round thing. That
It's
would
not going to
be
happen.
very interesting to behold.
It's never going
I
to
don't
happen.
think I'm ever going to see it though.
Never going to happen because you're trying to match up something that you can't physically exist in reality to begin with. Because the side profile view, if you looking at something where you see the side of your own head and the target has a value attached to it that doesn't change no matter how far away it gets, that in no way represents reality. Well, that's the reality that 7/6R, bending light around a spherical surface, exists in. Well, because it only exists in the maths, you can't derive a lens that's going to recreate side profile, perspective hijacking Earth curve mathematics with physical horizons being made flat and moving the horizon that's not a physical sphere edge because the black swan debunked it. That's never going to happen. You know, you're asking a bit much of this reification fallacy they hold, Darwin.
I know, but hey, they claim they have the proof, so I'm actually giving them an opportunity to physically prove that it might be a possibility.
I see.
Good luck with that.
They
Lois.
say it happens in the pictures, so justify your special pleading fallacy by showing us it happening on the small scale with a lens. Yeah, right.
Hey, Nathan, can you use this topic and describe what they're trying to say when they say if the Earth was flat, you could see Paris, France from New York?
Yeah, because it doesn't change in angular size. So if you draw you on the left and Paris on the right and draw a straight line between the two things, then according to them, based on the angular size not changing with distance, you'd just be able to draw a straight line and orthographic representation between the side of your own head being viewed in the frame and the target, in this case, France. Well, the straight line doesn't account for the fact that the actual size doesn't change with distance, but the size in angular terms has got way too small to see. But they would say, well, on a flat plane, you see forever because their maths only has Earth curve getting in the way. I just want to pass over to Chris. He's been trying to get a word in for a while now, and he tends to join when he's got a purpose. Hey, Chris.
Hey, I hate that that's my thing now because I really don't. So, no, I was just going to add, going back to the horizon. So I got Rumpus to admit that you could have a horizon on a flat surface or a flat Earth. And then I said, well, how would you know the difference if it's flat or round? He said, oh, well, because you can measure to the dip angle. So kind of circular there, right?
Very. Also, if he asserts that you can have a horizon on a flat plane, get him to draw that in the same method that he uses for his Earth curve maths, where the only cause of a horizon is Earth curve getting in the way. That's orthographic representation. You on the left, Earth curve in the middle, target on the right with a feet and inches value ascribed to it. We'll ask him to draw the same example with a flat plane, and then get him to point out where the horizon is. Oh, there isn't one. Right, so when you draw an orthographic view on a flat plane, there's no horizon, and yet we have one in reality. So the only cause in their maths for a horizon is an Earth curve edge getting in the way of stuff. Draw it without that Earth curve, and there's never a horizon.
I don't know. A lot of globers might not like that answer because a lot of them say you can't have a horizon on a flat surface.
Yeah, because their math says. Yeah, because their math says the only reason we have a horizon is because it's Earth curve getting in the way. There is no vanishing point. It's just Earth curve. It's the only thing in their column.
Well, I had a glober the other day, actually, for the flat Earth, when he was saying he's been up on the Shard and he could see France from the Shard in London. That's 150 k's away.
Well, maybe he can. But, I mean, maybe he can. I bet it was really, really, really small, though.
Yeah, but that shouldn't be happening on their globe, though.
Yep. Being very small, having a very low observer height definitely conceals what you can see past the surface you're looking past. Basically, it limits it dramatically. The smaller you get, the lower your observer height is. However, it doesn't completely take away your ability to see too far for a globe, though.
Yeah, because it doesn't exist in a globe. See Flatsoid FE's example with his colour chart and him raising and lowering the angle, limiting your angle of view to the point of infinity where you can no longer see it because it's on a piece of paper that you're looking down on. Well, that's merely a demonstration of angular resolution being limited as you raise and lower a camera. Well, the same effect is true if you look over a vast distance. I like to give the example with a brick. You take a brick out to a mile, and you can just see it on the horizon, right? So you push it out to 2 miles, and you can't see it anymore. It's too small. On the horizon, it has vanished a couple of miles. So your 8-inch brick disappears. Well, then someone comes along, takes the same exact brick, and builds a 100-foot skyscraper on top of it. Well, from 2 miles, you can definitely see the skyscraper, but you still can't see the brick at the bottom. The angular resolution to that point in the distance is still too limited to see it. It's still too small. Ergo, you've lost a brick at the bottom of the building. But the globers would say, why can't you see 8 inches of the building? It's like, no, the angle to the bottom of the building is too limited. So you can't see it, like you can't see the brick. Now, when we do this example with globers, they'll say, well, yeah, I can see the brick at 2 miles. Well, what about 15 miles? Can I see a brick on the horizon at 15 miles? Well, of course not. It's miles too small. But then you build a skyscraper on it, and there's a good chance that you can see a skyscraper 15 miles away. But you can't see the brick at the bottom. It's too small, too limited of an angle. Well, that's angular resolution. Perspective. Something that's completely hijacked in Earth curve maths when you turn the world side on, show the person that's taken a picture the side of their own head in the imagery, and ascribe feet and inches or meters to the target. And then they can say, why is 8 inches missing at the bottom of this skyscraper? Well, it's because the horizon's Earth curve. It's a physical obstruction, like a hill. It's got in the way to the tune of 8 inches. No, it hasn't. It's merely the vanishing point, which wouldn't even be represented in orthographic view on a flat plane. It would disappear completely, and therefore they say there's no horizon on a flat Earth. Absurd.
Not only that, like, as if that isn't enough, which it basically is, then you have to add in visibility, also known as turbidity. And this is something that I'd never, ever, ever hear them talk about, which is strange because this is a common fact, right? Visibility, you hear the weatherman, oh, visibility today is 8 miles, 10 miles, 15 miles. And that means you can't see past that because of of the turbidity factor. So I'm going to read the definition. Turbidity is the cloudiness or haziness of a fluid caused by large numbers of individual particles that are generally invisible to the naked eye, similar to smoke and air. So if you have one gas particle between you and the observation, no big deal. If you have 10 billion gas particles between you and the observation, big deal. It's going to limit your view. It's going to limit what you can see. It's just common sense.
Yeah, one of a list of multitudes of things that can obscure your view into the distance. And this has been covered a couple of years ago by someone else who Tim Osman managed to get hold of the list. And the list is very simple. On the globe side, you've got one reason for why things disappear into the distance. Earth curve. That's it. Now, we go into things like, how do you say the word perturbation? Is that the right word? Turbation? What was the word again? That's been covered.
Turbidity?
Turbidity. There you go. Sleeping Warrior has covered it once before, so my apologies for my unfamiliarity. Oh, obviously wasn't listening when Sleeping Warrior covered it. Anyway, there's a whole list of things, right? Swells, the tide, perspective. The list goes on and on and on and on for the flat Earth side.
As Timmy came in with a list of about 70 of them.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Our list is, there's all sorts of things that can cause things to disappear into the distance. Primarily, things getting too small. But there's all sorts of other things that can cause that effect too. Well, they don't have any of those effects. They just have the horizon is a physical Earth curve edge getting in the way of stuff. That's it. It's their only assertion. How much or how little it blocks it is variant based on refraction. But it's still Earth curve getting in the way, according to them.
Well, isn't that why Black Swan is number one? Because that horizon Earth curve of theirs had to be in front of the two oil platforms?
Yeah, for it to be a physical geometric sphere edge horizon, as they're asserting it is. And what do we get as a reply when we show them that? Well, nobody's claiming the horizon's Earth curve, yet it's the fundamental premise of their religion, that they tell us nobody's claiming. Or they tell us we would expect to see geometry, or that the geometric Earth curve edge horizon only exists in the maths. Yeah, it doesn't exist in reality, because we're not on a sphere.
It's funny that the same guy with the list came in and said nobody claims the horizon's Earth curve.
Yeah, the only thing in his list got debunked by himself by telling us nobody claims that the Earth curve's represented by the horizon. Yeah, he's got pictures that says this is Earth curve with pictures of horizons in it. They definitely claim.
Nobody claims the Emperor is wearing any clothes.
Nobody's claiming he's got any clothes on.
Black Swan madness that he caught, right? Like he couldn't understand the argument so badly that he even forgot what he was actually trying to do. Because it's insane when you listen to it. And he's like, I've posted pictures of Earth curve with horizons, but then telling us simultaneously that nobody claims the horizon's Earth curve. The irony is delicious, man.
Right. At this point, it's becoming like nobody's claiming the Emperor is wearing any clothes.
Nobody's claiming we have 15 degrees now turn of the Earth. You and your reference frames are ruined.
Shout out to Spurs Chemo. He's the one I remember talking about that. Made a little video.
Show me citation that somebody claims that the Earth is rotating 15 degrees an hour. Can we get a citation for that?
Yeah, can you cite that someone claims that, Flat Earther? How dare you assert that we claim there's 15 degrees an hour drift as Earth turns underneath stuff to cause Coriolis effect? Go and get me a citation that proves Earth claims that. Because you've debunked that. Why would you ever think that we claim that? Yeah, because you do. But I've debunked it, so what, I need to reference the fact that you've claimed it because you can't now believe that Earth would claim that? Yeah, we haven't got anything drifting away from us. So it seems amazing to a globehead that we would ever have a claim that Earth says we've got things drifting away as Earth turns underneath. That'd be Coriolis effect. Yeah, you definitely have. It just doesn't manifest in reality. And when we point out, we're told we should be citing their claim that they've got Coriolis effect. Beggars belief, they deny their own claim when it gets debunked because they're in such cognitive dissonance. Oh my God, I'm claiming Earth turns underneath. Well, that doesn't happen. You cite that we claim it. Yeah, you do, I'm afraid. We've just debunked it.
Wasn't it just last week where the guy came on and it's like pulling teeth? After about 25 minutes or so, he finally admitted Earth turned underneath.
We can say Earth is turning underneath to cause the deflection of the ball as I drop it. Oh, we can say that, can we? Well, that would shorten flight times because Earth would be turning underneath stuff. No, we can't say Earth's turning underneath stuff, so Earth's not turning underneath the ball you drop with deflection claimed to be exampled then. Oh no, Earth is turning underneath it. So Earth is turning underneath aeroplanes, shortening their flight times. No, Earth isn't turning underneath aeroplanes. Why would you ever think the globe claims that? Well, because you've got a ball claiming Earth turns underneath it. Even though it took about 50 minutes for us to actually get you to say, quote, we can say Earth's turning underneath the ball I drop. Yeah, you also say Earth turns underneath gyroscopes and pendulums. But that would mean you've got shortened flight times when travelling west, because Earth would be turning underneath them. Of course, when we get to that stage, they say, how would we ever have a claim that we've got Earth turning underneath stuff? We don't claim Earth turns underneath stuff. Yeah, you do. You're just in disbelief when we point out it doesn't happen.
It's a bit sloppy.
Just in football games.
No, it's a little bit sloppy.
Floppy to say Earth turns underneath. It's dangerous. That guy's told me, quote, it's dangerous to say Earth turns underneath. Rumper said it's sloppy to say Earth turns underneath. Yes, they say Earth turns underneath at 15 degrees an hour and that would shorten flight times. Hence, they then say it's sloppy description when we show it doesn't happen.
Why if someone goes hunting, they don't have to account for this Coriolis? Doesn't make sense to me.
Well, they say you do. They say that snipers have to lead their target because Earth's going to turn underneath the bullet once it leaves the barrel of the gun. So Earth's turning underneath the bullet at 15 degrees an hour. Like they say Earth turns underneath footballs to make field goals happen. Because Earth's turning underneath the ball when it leaves the field. You get the goal rather than not get the goal because Earth turned underneath it. And snipers have to worry about Earth turning underneath their bullets. Yeah, well, that would mean that planes have Earth turning underneath them at 15 degrees an hour. What's that I hear you cry? How dare you claim we say Earth's got turn of the Earth underneath stuff? Yeah, you do say that, yeah. We just debunked it.
Anybody
I
knows?
love that world-renowned astrophysicist has been reduced to sloppy.
Yeah, does anybody know a sniper who aims 460 meters or over 1,500 feet to the right of his target, expecting a 1 second shot to show up where it's not, where he has to aim to the right by that many feet? Who shoots like that?
A bad one.
Definitely no one I know.
And if they
A
did,
bad sniper.
and if they had to, as it's claimed in some instances that they do have to, then Earth would also be turning underneath anything else that left the spinning surface of Earth. So you'd observe 15 degrees an hour deflection not only in the bullet, as is claimed, but also in the helicopter, and in the drone, and in the football, like Neil deGrasse Tyson asserts, and in the aeroplane, and in the blimp that's filming the game. They'd all have Earth turning underneath them. It's not selective. It's not like it'll turn under a bullet but not turn under a drone. It'll turn under a football but not turn under an aeroplane. Yeah, it doesn't quite work like that, I'm afraid. Coriolis effect is either in existence on Earth because we're turning, in which case we'd notice because things would drift away at 15 degrees an hour, or it's not. And it's not, and when we point it out that it's not, they tell us to justify their claim that it does. Or cite their claim that it does.
Imagine being at this football game and when you jump up for joy, you all of a sudden land on someone else's lap on the other side of the stadium.
Exactly. Or you launch a drone on the equator, and as you watch your drone hovering, it drifts away at 1,000 miles an hour because you're turning underneath it.
Well, while we're on it, when you do any kind of research as to what snipers do, it has to do with temperature, what the wind is doing, and the velocity of the caliber and the distance of the shot and how much it's going to slow down so it has an arc that they have to anticipate. Nothing about Earth turning.
It's because it's not. We'd notice. Things would drift away.
What about my bee in the beehive? Same thing.
Yeah,
Yeah, you
But
have
they'll
a
tell you in the
powerful
manual-
constant
In the
westerly.
manual, it accounts for Earth turn.
That's right. South, north, and east winds debunk this notion. Correct. Whoever said that?
Get back to
Yeah,
the
and you'd
bees.
have a
What's he saying?
constant, powerful westerly wind.
Any
The guy
scientific
with the bee. What's your sweet argument?
Is the bee one is interesting because anything like a bird or a bee would have a hell of a time on the equator, wouldn't it?
See, the problem is the Globers don't understand about Magnus effect.
Magnus effect.
And then the bee and then the bee needed to overcome the spin of the Earth in order to overcome the beehive and go in the other direction.
Yeah, those bees have to be able to flap their wings, keep up with 1,000 miles an hour. Do you want to go on to the Magnus effect, Palatoid, or?
Magnus effect.
Yeah. What about it?
Every gun, if you shoot far range, you have the Magnus effect thanks to barreling. They think because it's barreling and it's going that way, they think that's Coriolis. It's just the Magnus effect due to the barreling of the rifle.
Again, like I say, if they want to account for what you're saying is the Magnus effect, with Earth turning underneath the bullet to cause a not actual deflection as you turn underneath it, then we'd be turning underneath stuff that's not attached, like drones, blimps, hot air balloons, footballs, anything else. If you jump up and down, if it's not attached, you're going to notice drift, i.e. Earth turning underneath that thing.
And Nathan, this is where in the past, I haven't heard it lately, they've always said, yeah, but that's powered flight. It's like, yeah, even better, because then the Earth is turning underneath the helicopter that's hovering, powered flight. So powered flight doesn't change the Earth turning. It's a glider isn't powered flight. Why isn't the Earth turning under a glider?
It's irrelevant because Coriolis deviation is not actual deflection observed as you turn underneath. So to have Coriolis effect, you observe something in the example you've given, a drone hovering. Well, the drone hovers, but on the equator would seem to fly away at 1,000 miles an hour. Well, it's not. It can't fly at 1,000 miles an hour. It's a drone. But the effect would be induced because it's claimed you turn underneath it. So the effect you're seeing is something that's actually hovering, that would be relatively stationary in its relative position in space, moving away from you at 1,000 miles an hour. Not because it can fly at 1,000 miles an hour, not because it is flying at 1,000 miles an hour, because you are claimed to turn underneath it. So it's a not actual deflection. It matters not whether or not the item is powered. It matters only that you see it moving because you are turning underneath it. That's how you get Coriolis effect. So it's nothing to do with the motion of the projectile. It's a not actual deflection. So if you're describing something like a bullet and you're describing it going through an actual curved motion, well, that's not Coriolis effect. The bullet would be travelling straight, and the reason it seems to curve would be because it's claimed Earth turns underneath. So you're observing it seem to move off its straight path, not because it is, because it seems to as you turn underneath it. Well, therefore, detailing what the powered whatever it does is irrelevant. Doesn't matter if it's powered or otherwise. You've got to see it drifting because you're turning underneath it. And if we're not seeing it drift, well, because it's powered, well, then we're not seeing Coriolis effect, which is what you're claiming on the globe side proves we are on a spinning surface, because 15 degrees an hour deviation as Earth turns underneath things that aren't attached, that's Coriolis effect. But to summarize the point, the most important part, you have to be turning underneath for there to be Coriolis effect. That's what Coriolis effect is. With that, I'm going to say, if you are watching this on either Nathan Oakley 1980 or Nathan Oakley premiering streams, then stay tuned, as there will be an after show to follow. Unfortunately, if you are watching this live, this is where we bid you farewell. A huge, massive, enormous thank you to all of you who smashed the super chat, liked, commented, shared, subscribed, or joined as a Nathan Oakley 1980 channel member. You can also get £50 for swapping your UK energy supplier to Octopus Energy. There is a link in the info box below this video. Once again, stay tuned if you're watching on either premiering stream. I've been Nathan Oakley, and I'll see you all in the next video.
What a lovely day!